There you go. Thanks.
Yeah.
And Aaron is going to moderate.
Yep. All right.
Thank you. And here is the mic.
Cédric.
So.
Hey, Aaron.
Hey, nice to meet you. Hey.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Oh, sorry.
Shake your hand again.
Nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, the small handshake for Dom who's had an operation, right? Hi, Patrick.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So yes, nice to meet you again. Hi. All right. Thanks very much for joining the panel. I'll sit down with you just to, I can walk around, but yeah. So I'd like to, talk a bit more about this subject of developer engagement in tokenized decentralized protocols. You're all either founders or prominent employees of tokenized protocols. So yeah, I think I and the audience would really like to hear a bit about who you are and what your project is doing, and if you can just give your quick overview of what your project is doing in this area, and then we can dive further into that. So Christoph.
Sure. So, well, the first contact was with Ethereum in summer 2014. I started working for the Ethereum Foundation. So this is a non-profit, and as we saw in the previous presentation, has attracted a lot of developers, was very successful. So there I learned a lot about this open source community thought and how to engage with a lot of developers. I think it was mostly because of strong tech. The second experience was the DAO experience, which was less technical people joining, but more community building and all those kind of things, which was then ended by a hack. And the third one is now Slockit, which is a for-profit company where it's also a little bit different. We usually just pay developers to work for us. So but still we want to have our software in the hands of many people and building things inside companies. So it's now, again, a different angle how to involve developers.
Yeah. Cool. Cédric?
Cool, yeah. I started the Dfinity Foundation together with Dominik in 2016, so almost 2 years ago. I've been working with him for a bit before that, and in the company I pick up all kinds of roles, but my new role now is leading our growth efforts. And what that means is leading our mining community, some of our strategic partnerships, and last but not least, the developer community. We haven't launched yet, so what we're doing is we provide a lot of Q&A. So we have a YouTube channel where almost every day we produce a video where we answer questions from the community and try to give them insights. We've also built an SDK that allows people to simulate the network on their local machine instead of having the actual network available. And then third is we launch landing pages with FAQs and kind of a place where people can communicate with each other.
Cool. Patrick?
Yeah, okay, so here is Patrick Dai. I'm from China, from Shanghai. So I'm from the Quantum Foundation. The Quantum projects we started in 2016. We wanted to add like the virtual machine on the Bitcoin's transaction model. So because we want to enable the Bitcoin community to have more flexibility. Yeah, and for myself, I joined the industry since 2012. At that time, I was preparing the PhD and then dropped out from the university. And I started very beginning in China as the miners, one of the biggest Bitcoin miner, and then full-time in the industry for 5 years. Yeah.
Cool.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Dominik. I've been involved in this blockchain space full-time since 2012. I was involved in the first formation of this crypto valley together with the Ethereum guys back in 2013. And in 2015, we founded IOTA. And what IOTA is, it's this further improvement upon the blockchain to really bring IoT and distributed ledgers closer together so that we can actually do micropayments without any transaction fees. And last year, we got approved the first non-profit foundation in Germany that is fully funded by cryptocurrencies and focused on pushing this space forward from a technical point of view, but also from a regulatory point of view. And right now, we're more than 70 people, and I lead the foundation together with Ralph and with David.
Oh, yeah. All right, thanks. Yasna?
Hi, I'm Yasna. Your program will say Janice Griffith. I am not Janice Griffith, but she will be giving a talk around 3, I believe, which I highly recommend checking out. I'm from SpankChain. We're building an crypto-economic infrastructure for the adult entertainment industry. So our focus on developer engagement has actually been kind of outside in. We created a product. We're about 8 months post-ICO. 4 months ago, we released a product, a campsite, which has in production payment channel implementations so that people can use crypto through the campsite. And then from this, kind of through working out the kinks that were inevitable, we're going to be releasing an SDK for a payment channel hub and an in-browser wallet that people can just kind of drop in a chunk of JavaScript that allows them to interact with the website through Ethereum, and we're bringing other ERC20 token support soon. As well, we're fairly involved in the general Ethereum community. We have a fairly strong belief that the only real way to solve these problems is together with everyone. So we've been working on a generalized state channel research with a whole whack load of people. And then the third thing that we're going to be focusing on quite soon is a library of user experience components, because actually we can solve all of the technical problems with Ethereum and with blockchain in general, and possibly no one will still use it because it's too complicated. So this other thing that we want to focus on is actually just allowing developers to not have to worry too much about that side of it, and kind of we would do as much of the research as we can to build out these components.
Cool. All right. So maybe Christoph, since you're now in a normal company, right? And you've also seen the complete other end. Maybe to you the question, like, what are some things that you see that are genuinely different with attracting developers to, the way that Slockit is working now, or previously when we were working in the Ethereum community or even the DAO community? What are some important differences there?
Well, first of all, once you have something like Ethereum, depending on which stage you are, once you have a token, people have kind of an incentive to build on a system that they have a stake in. It's a purely monetary incentive. There's other things, of course, also. You need to do a lot more social media handling, and I think everybody who has tokenized protocols knows about the stuff going on there, about the good and the bad and the hatred and the crazy, what you have, and the fake news, whatever. So actually, you need to spend some time on handling your community, and Ethereum did it very well in the beginning. And right now, they have reached a state where they have decoupled the foundation to a degree where they don't need to actively manage the community or involve in it directly. So I think if you have come to this state, then it's a very good point. But at some point, you need to bootstrap it. And so it's always this question about decentralization versus centralization. But attracting developers is still, first and foremost, it's very strong tech. And Ethereum was the first one with the Ethereum virtual machine, putting smart contracts on the blockchain. This was something so new and did attract so many minds which were just attracted by the thought of it. Yeah. I think with all of the points you mentioned, they are true, but this is by far the most important.
Right. Yeah. Cool. And by the way, you mentioned live token. Definity, your net is not yet live, but did you have a token live or not yet?
No, we don't. Intentionally, we did never launch an ERC20 token that would later convert to the actual chain, just to reduce the amount of emotions that are going on. So no, it will launch when the mainnet launches.
Right. And at Quantum, you do have a live token, right?
Yeah, we did some middle stage token. We generate the ERC20 token on May of last year, 2017, and the ERC20 token lasted almost 6 months. So people because people do not want their token in the exchange, so they want to withdraw the token. Yeah, so I think Ethereum helped us a lot at the very beginning, and then we released our mainnet last year. So right now it's a main network right now. Yeah.
Right. So would you say it's similar to the approach that EOS has?
Yeah, similar.
Their token and then their network and then it goes on.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, IOTA, live token and live network, of course.
Yeah.
So and since the beginning, it's been on the IOTA network.
Exactly, but like in the beginning, we didn't really have a tradable token because we said we wanted to only make it possible to trade the token once we are ready, once we're confident in attack. And I can definitely agree with you, like you need to have a strong tech to build this developer community, right?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, one of the most important things, like once you do have a live token, is to get rid of the speculators, right? Because the speculators really alienate all of the developers, because then they're just like screaming pump and dump and when is the next announcement, and it just pisses off the developers that just want to focus on the core tech and get shit done, right? And I think that's very important when it comes to building up these developer communities early on.
Yeah, cool. And just now, Spankchain, do you have a live token? Or?
Yes, we have Spank, and pretty soon Booty. So Spank is a staking token which mints Booty.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one ICO.
One ICO, yes.
Right. And do you see some of those aspects of well, maybe speculation or like what you describe, what you basically try to avoid by not having a live token? Do you see that in your community happening? That's
A little bit, but I mean, it hasn't really been too much of a problem for us so far.
Oh.
Yeah.
Great, because it's more important to build great tech.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. What about education effort, like specific education efforts? What are your projects doing to specifically, like, are you building online courses, or are you doing events, or and what are things that you've seen that work well, and what things don't work so well? Just some of you.
But I think Ethereum really started this whole meetup scene, kind of. So this was Stefan Tool back then. Like, of course, meetups did exist before, but in the crypto community, he started, I think, 50 of them worldwide, and they are still existing and growing. And I think this is a backbone of the Ethereum community. And they are now, of course, run by someone else, not a foundation anymore.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we had some hackathons, social media stuff. For the DAO, it was mostly Slack, where the community was. Today, you use Telegram channels and other things to have a place where they help each other. That's, I think, the most important part.
Right, yeah, so that is not sort of top down from the foundation or core group educating others, but enabling that people educate each other.
Right.
Right, yeah. What about
Yeah, for us, I think we also kind of have a decentralized organization in the community. There's about 150 people worldwide that took roles in the community that help manage different channels. And I think on top of that, we're building the Dfinity Academy, which should get you, if you're a normal developer who has never heard of blockchain, from zero to basically deploying your first application. And I think why it's more possible today than it's been in the past is there's more and more projects that adopt WebAssembly as kind of the virtual machine on the application layer. And so that speaks to a lot of web developers because they already learn and hear about it in their current role. And it takes out a huge chunk of learning a domain-specific language.
Right, like, for example, Solidity was for many people new, and now they can just do WebAssembly, which they would do anywhere else.
Yeah.
I just might add to it, although Solidity has its flaws and problems, but I found it still hard to write a smart contract in EVASM safely compared to Solidity. Actually, Solidity is super easy, maybe too easy, because you can make mistakes. But I think Solidity was not the obstacle. I think it's actually easier for new programmers to say, I write a Solidity contract as of today than an EVASM contract. Once you have the tooling right and stuff like this, then yes, it may get...
Totally agree. I think it all depends on the toolchain that you have at your disposal.
Right. Yeah. So for Quantum, earlier we are mainly focused in Asia, in China. So we are building the community through offline and online. So online we are hosting some. We are doing the publishing a few books, a technical book, introduction of how people can build the blockchain apps, and also we are doing some online hackathon, and we are cooperated with some online like open source website. To promote the blockchain in China. Yeah, and for the offline, we are doing like a global meetup, like a monthly global meetup, like everywhere. Yes, that's kind of can attract the developer. And also another way is like we are trying to leverage the bigger company, like already have very big global developer community, like a Microsoft, or like in China we have a security company, the 360. So they are pretty very big global like developer community, but for hacks. So we are working with them together to build the community. Yeah.
Right, and this aspect of developers helping each other, do you also see that happening?
Yeah, the developer, we have a Slack channel, so we invite all the developer we meet online, offline to go to the channel. So if they have a question, basically they help each other, yeah.
Cool. So in my opinion, the most important component is definitely documentation, right? Properly documented libraries, modules, and everything that is also maintained, right? Maintenance is probably the most important aspect of it, right? Because if it's outdated, it's so frustrating as a developer. And so we as a foundation really focus on documentation more and more right now. So we have, for example, docs.iota.org, where everything is documented for all of the different libraries, so you can also understand, hey, I'm a Java developer, I need to use this tool set, so on and so forth. But then equally important is definitely the community component that builds upon that documentation. So for example, we have ecosystem.iota.org, where we make it possible for developers to just post tutorials. So basically it's this co-sharing, this co-learning experience where one has learned something and then shares his experience with someone else. And that is truly empowering in that sense, because then you really have an ecosystem where we as a foundation no longer need to hold everyone's hand and say, hey, you need to do this and that, but the ecosystem itself is like resolving these issues that they have. And meetups is definitely a core component to that as well, but also hackathons, supporting hackathons with, for example, our ecosystem fund, and with our developers and so on and so forth. Yeah. And we also want to focus more on the academy side, really this learning experience where we have an actual platform where you can get a certificate. Right? What made Linux so successful as well is that you get the Linux certificate when you finish the courses, right? And that you can then show to your employer and say, hey, I have this certificate and I'm a Linux certified developer or something like that. And having such a program, a certified program as well, I don't know if anyone has this so far, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but having such a certified program is definitely empowering in that sense, because at the end of the day, we want to empower developers to build cool shit, but they should also like start earning money with these tools, right? Either they build up a startup or they get hired by some of the companies that we work with. And such a certified program is definitely the way forward there.
So I totally agree that documentation is kind of a make it or break it thing. One of the things that we try to do as much as possible is make things as transparent as we can, as early as we can. So if there's anything that we can release, we do, and we document it as much as is reasonable. And another thing that we're focusing on in the near future is creating video tutorials, partnering with people in the adult community to create video tutorials of Solidity development or other types of things. Because that, to some people, will be a lot more approachable. These people are very comfortable in front of the camera, and hopefully it won't be a surprise to anyone, but like adult performers are pretty average, normal people with varying interests and intelligences, and so I think it actually is going to be a really cool thing to have some of these performers be talking people through code and explaining how all of this works. Hopefully that's going to be coming up in the next little while as well. Cool. And also just engaging with people. We have a Discord server, so a lot of the time someone will just kind of pop in and ask a question about how to do something, and we'll just engage. Kind of that real-time interaction is really helpful in general, I think.
Yeah, thanks. And interesting point that you mentioned, Dominik, on certifications. I don't know of any foundation that has an official certified ex-developer, but I think it would make sense. But I think it's good to think about. Should it? Yeah, there's a consensus academy. Yeah, and there you can get some piece of paper. But should it be the let's say the founding team or the foundation even handing out those certifications? Because you could imagine that it would be another body that's created, or even 2 or 3 that creates certified IOTA developer or certified quantum developer.
Maybe blockchain developer is okay.
Yeah. Well,
it's similar sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, it all depends on how the foundation is structured, right? I wouldn't see the Ethereum Foundation doing something like that, to be honest. But like with the IOTA Foundation, where we actually want to centralize the ecosystem around the foundation itself, where we are the vocal point of the entire ecosystem, I do think it makes sense for us to issue such a certificate, because we are neutral, we're independent, but we represent the ecosystem. And as such, it makes sense for us to issue such certificates.
Yeah.
That's why we're taking it serious.
Cool. At Affinity, do you have anything such as something?
We actually know, I think it's a great idea, the certificate.
You can steal it.
The way we think about it is, I think we want to kickstart or help people start great initiatives, but they don't have to necessarily stay within the foundation. So we're also funding research at a couple of universities already. And we have, as I mentioned, like lots of people in the community that are not part of our core team. So I think as long as we find a good initiative, we're more than happy to help move that forward if we feel that it meets quality standards that we would set for ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think another thing maybe the industry or the foundation should do is like give some directions to the developer, because for a lot of newcomer or new beginners, they have no clue like what kind of blockchain application they can build, or like what kind of so-called like dApps or decentralized application. And personally, I have some like idea on the dApps. Maybe it's not really a well-designed concept. Most of dApps is just purely not work. Yeah, it's maybe even a fake concept. Yeah, so we need to, the whole industry, we need to think again, like, okay, what kind of application really is suitable for blockchain? What kind of application is just for raise some money? Yeah, so we need to do something for the whole industry, so we can give some good direction for the developer. Otherwise, it's a waste of resource. People are building the dApps, but for sure, a lot of application, the centralization is better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also one of the things to keep in mind is there's different types of developers, and so it's a little bit of a question of who you're aiming for. And the way I look at it is kind of two types of developers, and everyone is a little bit of each. But like there's the ones who kind of like focusing on the core software and like the nitty-gritty, dirty, painful stuff. And there's ones that are kind of, I think of it as Lego block developers, where like there's all these blocks and they build them up in these amazing ways. And I used to be more on the first side. I really liked understanding how all of the core things worked, and then kind of as I get older, as I get more experienced, let's say, I tend to lean a little bit more on the Lego block side, because it's kind of like, okay, these brilliant people have made this thing, and now I'm going to take their brilliant thing and put it together in my own brilliant way or whatever. So I think for now, this technology is still in its infancy, and so we do have to focus more on like the core people who are willing to get dirty, but that actually takes out a lot of developers out of the equation. And so the more that we can actually help the ones who do prefer the Lego block style of things and give them the tools to build dApps, and like maybe they don't even have to understand how the core stuff works, and they can still build brilliant things, I think that's very soon going to be an important thing to start focusing on as well.
Maybe one thing to add. Like you spoke about documentation, this is helping people building on top of it. What we also need is specification to build actually our own client. So the question is, let's say I want to wake up tomorrow, learn some Rust and build an IOTA client. Can I with the current specification? So that's this question. Like with Ethereum, I think one of the core things which was different from any other project was that Gavin Wood put out the yellow paper, which is hard to read, but it's a technical specification, and it led to a C++, Python, Rust, Java, JavaScript, even Haskell, and some other languages who did implement an Ethereum client on their own, which would then run on the network. And once we had a big problems in the network, like Shanghai attacks 2016, there were clients crashing, but because other clients were still running, the network was still alive. And if you want to have core developers joining, you need a very, very good specification. They can even start on their own without even talking to you. Then you have done a good job. Yeah.
I fully agree. And I mean, this is the purpose of the foundation itself, right? To do the specification, do these building blocks that you've mentioned. And yeah, like, by the way, so IOTA is one of the few communities where we also have a community build client. So they read through the entire code, which always is a pain in the ass, and I feel sorry for them that we didn't put out a proper specification, but it was still done, right? And I think that really shows that there's a real developer ecosystem around it that really wants to build stuff.
Cool. But specification is a good point. On that note, for Bitcoin, there's no specification. Yet it still works. But the dynamics there are very different, because there's also there was a Bitcoin.
Why it's so politicized.
Yeah, but then let's say the specification is what's currently there, and I don't think there are any plans to create such a specification.
But if you would have done this for Ethereum, there have been so many hard forks in the beginning people were not even aware of. Like 2 weeks after we started, we had just the first hard forks because the C++ client and the Go client were not in sync. It was a minor thing which was more or less not good defined. Return value, should it be 0 or nothing? So it's a little detail, but if you have specified it, you can then go to the paper and say, this is the right client, this is wrong. If you would not have the specification, you would have a big argument about, no, Go is right, no, C++ is right, and then the teams can fight. Who has to update, who has the right chain, who has the wrong chain? Right. So, but with the yellow paper, was like as the highest authority, this was crucial for all of the hard forks in Ethereum. Very important part.
Right. And in Infinity and Quantum, do you have a specification or do you not?
Yeah, but we haven't published anything yet. So, but I mean, a big chunk of the time that we've spent or that our developers spent so far is like coming up with a specification that makes sense from A to Z. And now we're working on the implementation. I think the second part that's super interesting is how decisions are made in terms of forks. Like, so a lot of the current systems out there use off-chain governance to make decisions. And so we're working on an on-chain system, which I think will make it a lot easier to move forward quickly and make decisions together and then act upon them for the whole network. So I think that's a main difference from what you've shown in your presentation with AWS and everyone. Because they're centralized, like if Windows decides to upgrade to Windows 8 or 9 or 10, well, 9 doesn't exist, right?
No, I do.
They just update the specifications as well, and everyone kind of follows along or doesn't, but there's no Windows 9, because someone figured like there should be a Windows 9.
Yeah, and there's no Windows 10B or 10C, like forked off.
So I think that will have an impact on the dynamics as well in terms of how quickly a network can evolve and release new updates.
Yeah, I think for Quantum, when we build the blockchain, we think about the problem, like how to build a better governance model. Because one part of the reason why I want to build Quantum is because I tired of like all the hard fork, like the Bitcoin Cash, and like I know all the biggest miner in China, so I know how they involve with this, and it's really boring. And so when we build Quantum, we design some on-chain like governance. We are using the smart contracts to put some initial parameters of the network, like the gas limit, gas price, even the block size. Yeah. So when the network is full of transaction, the people can make a proposal to the network, and then the smart contract will just change the parameters. Yeah. But it's limited parameters. Right now we can only change 3 of the parameters. So you can even you have a hard fork, you do not need everyone to change their clients. So the clients will upgrade. So that's one thing we are doing. Another thing is, since we get a lot of features from the Bitcoin, so we have like multiple clients. We have the traditional, the Qt client, the old one. It's very stable. Yeah, it's old, but it's very stable. And we can use all the SPV wallet, like Electrum, or all the Bitcoin implementation. So we are using almost every version of the Bitcoin clients you can use on Quantum. So it's kind of make the network more decentralized, yeah. So that's something we are trying to do. I think the on-chain governance have some limitation. No matter how well designed something new happened, then you need to change some. You still need off-chain meetings. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. On-chain governance works as long as it works, but if it doesn't, then okay.
It doesn't work at every scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Cool. Maybe to zoom in a bit into I know that IOTA has an ecosystem fund, but I think these funds are becoming more and more common. EOS is quite notorious of funding every other thing to build and come to EOS, but many projects are doing it. What are, from your experience, some things that are good about it, that maybe you've seen in your experience? What are challenges with making those funds working well, and also getting real value out of it, rather than giving someone money, they build something, and maybe nothing ever comes of it?
Well, I think the main thing that most of these cryptocurrency projects need to find, like, what is the purpose of this fund, right? EOS fund is a venture capital fund, right? They actually get stake in the startups. And as such, the incentive and the entire revenue model is completely different than ours, for example. And as such, you support the ecosystem in a very different way, because now you're no longer thinking about, hey, I want to support the ecosystem to build these building blocks that you mentioned so that others can build on top of it and then build startups. And the way that we think about ecosystem funds is not there to give us a return on investment. Like there's no direct return on investment for our foundation when we give out funds. It's like the money is gone for us. But we have to think about this differently, right? Because we want to build an ecosystem. And we want to build an ecosystem of developers where these building blocks are being built not by us, but by the community. And these are the kind of projects that we fund with our ecosystem fund. And obviously, it's a very tricky question because then you, for example, have these discussions about, hey, like there's this project that wants to do this and that. They will obviously open source the entire project. But like, what is the purpose? Like, what benefit does it bring to the entire ecosystem? Because if it's just a single application that is open source, it's good. It's a good tutorial. People can learn from it how IOTA was integrated, but it's not the building block. And for us, the ecosystem fund is really there to fund these building blocks. Because only through that we can actually get this not direct return on investment, but later on we get this return on investment by actually have a growing and flourishing ecosystem.
Right. So what people build must be, really usable by others, not only
reusable.
Reusable, not only in terms that it functions, but that it is well documented and that it is working. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's especially important for those parts which, first of all, needs to be open source and should not have their own token. So, like the Ethereum grant is also going in this direction to say we found open source projects which do not go for an ICO because everybody needs them. So on those, but other things like just funding people for just building on your platform, this is close to market manipulation, but it goes into this direction. What I'm saying is VC is a different thing, of course, you want to get returns, but I think Ethereum focused always on giving out only grants, also no return of investment for things everybody needs which should not be tokenized.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a fund, yeah. So, but it's not really public because it's kind of I think a lot about how to really grow the ecosystem because even today all the blockchain projects like you have some regulation risk, yeah. So that's a huge risk there. Not huge, but it's a risk there. So sometimes a lot of foundation I think they want to do more, or like they want to do less, but they do not know what's the criteria, what's the bottom line, like how can I really running the fund more professionally, more efficiently, or like it should be it's a commercial fund or it's like only for non-profit foundation. So I had some. I mean, we are struggling trying to figure out what's the best way. But since we support a lot of projects, maybe more than 50 projects around the quantum ecosystem, and we learned a lot of lessons. Yeah. So, but right now I think the foundation for sure. The mission of the foundation is maximize the influence. It's like maximize the ecosystem to grow the system. But we should still have some commercial like fund to support around the system. So that's maybe the easiest way to grow the projects. Yeah, because otherwise. It's like everything is like a Linux foundation because the time already passed by. So it's the timing is not right right now. So we need some. Sometimes the commercial is the biggest charity. So because if you can have a return, you can reinvest to your ecosystem, and you can attract more developer. That's I think sometimes it's good. So I prefer like a foundation for non-profit and some commercial fund around the foundation in the ecosystem. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Well, we haven't announced any funds, but let's hypothetically say
that there might be
some plans and announcements. I think we would agree with both sides. We would probably also have a VC type of fund that finances projects that use the technology for some real-life use cases, because I think we all agree that great technology is only as good as its use cases in the end of the day. And then we will probably also have a fund that invests in long-term projects for the ecosystem that are like one layer below the application layer and help the ecosystem grow.
Right, so indeed those again, the reusable building blocks.
Are both funds under the foundation or are they separately?
They're not announced, so I don't know of any funds.
Oh yeah, you can't say that. Hypothetically.
And what about SpankChain? Do you do anything thing in funding developers, or maybe do you get any funds?
One thing I wanted to add is since the foundation are holding a lot of coins, so that's a problem. So we are trying to find some professional third-party manager or third-party like a partner. They can help us manage the coin to again redistribute the coin to the community, through invest or through online bounty program. So we have few third-party partner. One is the Sora Capital, they pretty professional capital, so they are using the coin, but to help us grow the ecosystem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, so we don't have an official fund, but we are working on it. We have plans for it in the future, and I agree in general that these are, at least in our view, one of the best reasons to fund projects is because they enhance the ecosystem. So kind of if a bunch of things are funding like new ICOs or something, maybe that's not, I mean, there are cases where that will totally make sense too, but in general, projects that enhance the ecosystem are kind of the ones that tend to have the most impact ultimately, because the stronger the ecosystem is, the stronger we are. So our focus so far has been in partnering companies, and once we do start creating our own fund, public fund, that will primarily be the focus of just projects that enhance the ecosystem as a whole, that don't necessarily have a completely direct benefit to us, but still very much benefit us and benefit the entire community.
Right.
And I mean, it creates a completely different dynamic if we would set up a VC fund. Because I was talking with someone from Vito before, VCs have been kind of disrupted from this in this entire blockchain space, because they can no longer fund blockchain startups, right? Everyone just does an ICO. And now if the foundation also funds startups, and it basically means that the entire venture capital world is no longer interested in working with your foundation, right? And in my opinion, that is not the purpose of non-profit foundations that are behind these cryptocurrency systems. Because the purpose of these foundations is to really build an agnostic layer, right? Be the agnostic layer that enables everyone to come together and facilitate this co-creation, partnerships, right? And stuff like that. And yeah, just a thought.
Yeah. Also, I think besides the foundation, there's a lot of projects like Zcash or EOS. They have their own company behind this. Like Block One was, I think Zcash, they have a company too. So their company, they are doing some funding too. Besides the Zcash, they have a very stable income every year from the mining reward, and their company are trying to raise some money too. Same like Block One, they get some funding again. Besides the US funding, so I don't know it's good or not, but I kind of feeling we are at a very early stage of the blockchain, so we need to try to balance the two worlds. The real business world is still company structure, and this is a totally new world. Okay, it's a blockchain protocol a structure. So that's something we need to figure out. Yeah.
Right, and Divinity is a company, right? A foundation, or no,
it's a foundation.
A foundation, yeah, sure.
So no company.
Yeah.
No company.
There's no company. I mean, we have subsidiaries to pay out salaries in different jurisdictions, but it's all governed by the foundation. There's no.
Yeah. For Quantum right now, we only have foundation, but we are still thinking if we should set up a company for all the employee or for the later hired people or something like that. Yeah.
No. Well, because indeed, what you mentioned, subsidiaries to pay salaries. Indeed, ultimately, you deal with people who need to take a salary because they need to buy bread and pay for the mortgage. So you have this completely decentralized thing of okay, we have tokens and they have value on some market, but then ultimately. Many people just would like to draw a monthly salary in fiat currency. So there's some challenges there as well to resolve, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the traditional world is still a reality for every one of us, right? Or for most people, I think. Yeah. I mean, I know some people I have one or two people who are extremely inspiring on our team that live completely in a tokenized world. And kind of left the traditional system, but I think for most of us, it's just not practical yet.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that once again that is important to if someone works at Amazon and has that great job, how are you going to attract them if you say, well, you get these tokens?
Yeah. that's a problem we are facing right now, because like if we wanted to hire someone like a very high level person from Alibaba, or like the vice president or some high level guy, they say, oh, they want to join the foundation, but they also prefer, maybe they have some shares for the company. Yeah, it's more traditional for them. And if this, you only give them some token, I think that's a problem for the blockchain projects later. Like you already divided like all the tokens among all the developer. So if some really great guy want to join your company or join the foundation, how can you incentive them? Yeah, you have nothing to give them. Only contribution. You do the contribution, but you get nothing.
Yeah, you can't just issue a new round.
Yeah, so that's a problem. Yeah.
For Dfinity, we also had to be quite creative. Like we did a small, in relative terms, ICO at the very beginning, but then our last couple of funding rounds were private or traditional rounds. And I think in a lot of ways, the way we think about all this is like we try to avoid distraction. Because maybe we could have raised more money, or it could have been more decentralized, and we had to find a way around that with the airdrop. But we ultimately thought that doing another ICO in this environment where regulatory, it's still not clear how these things are going to be treated like 5 years from now. We opted for less distraction, so we can focus more on like the tech investment and the building out our roadmap.
Right, because you want to build the tech.
And I think that's why we often think a bit more traditionally, and we have these like subsidiary, like we just basically we outsource some of these decisions to an accountant that has been, or a company that has been doing accounting for years and years, and just try to do it the traditional way, because I think it's, or we think it's not worth pushing the boundaries at every corner, just to avoid some of the distractions that come with pushing it right now.
Yeah.
All right. Then maybe to close off, we touched upon the subject, like you said, like I want to hire someone from Alibaba.
Yeah.
In general, there's, I think, this scarcity of talent, right? There's, if you look at people who are familiar with blockchain, there's only this small group of people who is really good at cryptography, who understands consensus algorithms, etc., 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 and then. There's lots of talent out there, but they're working at Amazon or Google or whatever, and they either don't know us, or they are they're too well incentivized. And so what's in your experience are some challenges and some things that projects can do to get the talent on board that they need, either within the foundation or at least in their what you call it? Their atmosphere, attract and building on top of them, and being in their community?
I would say, of course, we always need more developers. We always are looking for great talent. But in general, if you're looking at the space from an outside view, the amount of talent which is flowing in right now is actually amazing. So they're coming for different reasons. They're coming for the tech, some come for the money, some come for other reasons, because we have kind of created money, so we have enough, kind of, and the blockchain space itself is really rich, and so we have this explosive mix of intelligence and money already there. And I feel that people just flowing in, actually. And actually, Ethereum Foundation, I did never feel that they actively hired, it just came, contributed code, and after a while we started paying them. So I'm not working for the foundation anymore, so just to make this clear. But they just came because of the tech. So I think they come naturally. Of course, you can help them with academy and all the stuff, but I think it's still increasing exponentially, the number of devs flowing into the system.
Okay, so maybe the problem is solved.
It's still not enough, right? Okay. Because we are growing faster than they're coming in.
Yeah.
For us, it's a different situation because our code is not open source, or most of the code is closed source right now. We definitely focus on quality over quantity. Hiring has been our #1 priority from the first day, and I think now we're reaching, 38 people or 39 now. And we try to find the people that are interested in solving really, really tough problems. If I'm in the office, I'm always in awe of the people that I get to work with, like just the brain power that I'm exposed to. And I think it's paying off, but out of the 38 people, I think 4 or 5 are just working on hiring and recruiting. So it's basically hiring and recruiting and tech in our company right now, which makes for a pretty interesting mix right now.
Right, so it's tech and people who get more tech in. Great.
So we have around like 55 people globally in 9 countries. So it's pretty like a blockchain. Yeah. So we set up like 3 offices, 1 office in Shanghai and 1 office in US and an office in Belarus in Minsk. So most of our team members, originally I hired some people from the community in 2013, 2014, know some people through Bitcoin Talk or through online website. Then we worked on some small projects and then we share the same vision and then we work together. And then all the developer we hired, they help hire more developer. They have their friends, they have the other developer community. So that's how we get all the developer globally. Yeah, and also another thing we are trying to do is we are training some very young talented students in China. We hired from the best university and then give them like 1 year for training and teach them. So that's how we try to hire people. I mean, the people are coming right now, but still another thing is like if you want to, I can feel that the blockchain is not only about the technology. It's kind of a mix of culture, society, economics. So you need a talent from many areas. We know the developer community, we can find people easily, but the business people, the marketing, the PR, it's kind of a lot of stuff under the foundation. Yeah. So we are trying to. That's a reason why I say maybe we need a more experienced people, like the guy who maybe someone from the Android community, someone from the iOS community, so they can help to grow the blockchain together. Yeah.
And I mean, for us, it goes back to what Christoph said before, right? If you have a cool tech, you have like really these developers that just join and want to learn more about it. And then they start building some stuff on their own. They put it up on GitHub and you say, hey, like, this is cool. Do you want to work with us? Usually it takes us like a week to respond to them. And then once we respond, hey, like, just join us, right? And this is how we built IOTA initially. Like most of our most competent tech people came from within the community. And only recently, now that we're scaling up to more than 70 people, we started hiring outside of the community. So we also have head of HR, we have full-time headhunter, and people that really just focus on getting these core tech people on board. And in my opinion, the most difficult part for people like us that actually run these foundations is to maintain the quality, right? And this goes back to what you said, it's not just about having hardcore tech people, but it's also about having this diverse skill set where people are philosophically aligned and also like really believe in the vision and the core tech behind it. Because only if everyone pulls on the same string, you can actually build a very competent A-class team. And if your team starts degrading, right, and you start hiring, you start really seeing the damages that causes. And maintaining quality is definitely the most important and most difficult part of that.
Yeah, I think getting people from the community is definitely one of the, I don't know about easiest, but it's certainly the most useful way to do it because they're people who are already passionate about the technology and really interested. One of the things that we tend to believe at SpankChain is that blockchain developers are built, they're not found. Like there's not a lot of people, I mean, there's a bunch of us obviously, but there's a lot of people that we might be missing out on just because they don't have that experience yet. And so we kind of tried to find these people who are good developers, who are passionate, who might not necessarily have blockchain experience, and then give them the tools to learn it. And then the other thing is actually almost this idea that maybe we don't even necessarily have to hire those people in order for them to work on these projects with us. So a lot of what we do is partner with other companies kind of on like maybe just for a few months to work on some project together. And so that's not like, because everyone is so, they're fascinated by all sorts of things and like there's a lot of cool projects in the space. And like, yes, people will come to you if you have a cool project, but there's like 10 other really cool projects too. And so one of the cool ways to kind of solve that problem a little bit is to kind of partner with those other projects and be like, okay, these are the things that we're trying to solve. These are the things that will help both of us. So let's just for this amount of time, let's work together to build this thing. And that really takes some of that load off of like having to constantly be like either trying to like poach people or like desperately trying to build your development team. Is just kind of find them out there and don't try to take them away from the thing that they're doing. Just like figure out a way that can work together. Yeah, thank you.
Right, so then you avoid the fight for talent, and it becomes more bundling up of
yeah, because it doesn't really have to be a fight necessarily. I mean, of course, like on some level, you do of course need your own developers, and they need their own developers. But it can be much more collaborative than I think people realize.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'd like to thank you all very much for a very interesting panel, at least from my side. I hope the audience found it interesting as well. So yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Questions from the audience? Maybe they're here. Ask them anything.
So Herb from Vito. I have one question to Dom from IOTA. So I understand the importance to have second layer solutions or software solutions running on top of the Tangle or any ledger. And you support community approaches, projects with the ecosystem fund. But how would you deal with a situation where you have someone like Christoph Jentzsch working on a software, a token-free software to integrate actually IoT devices into an ledger ecosystem? So he mentioned actually that it's independent of the blockchain or ledger technology below. It necessitates somehow smart contracts, but this is a commercial, for-profit company and kind of different from what you explained, but obviously pretty valuable for IoT applications.
Right, like your question is if we would still support that?
In what sense? So it's kind of different from what you explained, but I think valuable.
So for us, it doesn't matter if it's an individual, if it's a startup, for-profit, or a big corporate, right? As long as we see the kind of benefit that comes out of it, we would support it, right? And like in this case, it would definitely make sense if IOTA would be integrated, and a module would come out of it that can then be this building block for others, right? Because we don't pay people to just integrate IOTA, right? Like all of these absurd exchanges that just want hundreds of thousands of dollars to integrate IOTA, like we don't do that, right? And it's the same with developers and startups. What we want to see coming out of that is really a building block, really that can be replicated and that can be utilized by the entire ecosystem. Because only then it makes sense for us to actually fund it. And then obviously the requirements are that it's open source, properly documented, that we kept up to date, and so on and so forth. But we only fund it if that's the case.
More questions? Okay, so huge applause for our excellent panel. All these guys are going, and ladies are going to be here. You're all invited to have lunch now. We're coming back in 30 minutes. And big applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Interesting stuff.
Cool.
Meeting you.
Yeah, I know Dominik. I visited their house, their office